You know the name. I'd wager almost anything on that. And I'd wager nearly as much that most of what you think you know about it is wrong, because the man who carried it was not a creature of the night. He was not a myth, and he was very much not a count. He was a real prince of a real country, and in the summer of 1462 he did something that almost nobody in Europe believed was possible. With a small, hungry, outnumbered army, he stopped the most feared war machine on earth and sent its Sultan home. There was no great battle. That is the part that still unsettles me. He did it, mostly, with fear. Edirne, in the early 1440s. A city of minarets and horse markets in what is now European Turkey, and the beating heart of a young empire that had not yet taken Constantinople. Into that court came two boys from the north, handed over by their own father as a guarantee of his loyalty. The elder was about 11. His name was Vlad, and behind him walked his little brother, Radu. Their father rode home without them. That was the arrangement, and everyone involved understood exactly what it meant. Behave, and your sons are honored guests. Step out of line, and they are something else entirely. The country those boys came from was Wallachia, the flat, fertile plain between the Carpathian Mountains and the river Danube, in what is now southern Romania. It was not a small place, and it was not a poor one. It sat exactly where two worlds pressed against each other, the Christian kingdom of Hungary above, the expanding Ottoman state below, and a prince in the middle who had to keep both of them happy or lose everything. Wallachian rulers rarely finished their reigns peacefully. It was, quite honestly, one of the worst jobs in 15th century Europe. Their father had a nickname, and it is the reason you have heard of any of this. In 1431, he was invested into a chivalric order founded by the Holy Roman Emperor to resist Ottoman expansion. Its emblem was a dragon. From then on, he was Vlad Dracula, Vlad the Dragon, and in Romanian, the ending on Dracula simply means son of. That's it. That is the whole origin of the most famous name in horror, Son of the Dragon, a knightly honor, not a curse, and it was not a nickname pinned on him by his enemies. Surviving documents show he signed himself with it. Dracula in his own hand, on his own charters. Whatever the world did with that name afterwards, he wore it first, and he wore it proudly. There is a wrinkle in it though, and I love this one. In Romanian, the word drac drifted over the centuries until it came to mean devil. So a title that was handed out as a badge of Christian honor slowly soured in its own language into something far darker, long before any novelist got near it. Vlad spent roughly 6 years in Ottoman custody, and those years made him. He learned to ride, to fight, to read the court, and to speak fluent Ottoman Turkish. He watched, from the inside, exactly how the empire organized an army and how it made decisions. And here the two brothers went in opposite directions. Radu, the younger, charming one, settled beautifully. He became a favorite at court and eventually converted to Islam. Vlad did not settle at all. Contemporary accounts describe him as difficult, resentful, and punished for it. In 1447, word came north to south that his father and his eldest brother, Mircea, had been lost in a political upheaval back home. Vlad was about 16. Everything he had, every claim, every protection, vanished in a single season, and he spent almost the whole of the rest of his life trying to take back a throne that had been taken from his family. He got it briefly in 1448, held it for a matter of weeks, and lost it again. 8 years of exile followed. Then, in 1456, he came back for good, and the ruler who walked into Targoviste, the Wallachian capital, was nothing like the boy who had left. He broke the power of the great land-owning families who had made and unmade princes for generations. He enforced law in his towns with a severity that people talked about for centuries, in a way I am not going to describe, and honestly, you don't need me to. The Romanian name he was given later, Cepes, say it Cepes, is not a family name. It is a description of the single punishment he used more than any other, and here is my own view for whatever it's worth. The Ottoman court took a hostage boy and gave him the finest military education available anywhere in the world at that moment, on the reasonable assumption that gratitude would follow. It did not. They built the exact weapon that would one day be turned back on them. If you think that's the whole tragedy of the story in one sentence, tap the like and stand there with me. And if you reckon he'd have turned out precisely the same had he never seen Edirne at all, go argue it in the comments, because that is a genuinely good argument, and I'm not certain I'd win it. Either way, the bill for that education came due. Wallachia paid the Ottomans an annual tribute. It was the price of being left alone, and for years Vlad paid it. Then he stopped. He also declined an invitation to present himself at the Sultan's court in person, which, given how these invitations tended to end, strikes me as the single most sensible decision he ever made. The Sultan he was refusing was Mehmed II, and he was not a man used to being refused. 9 years earlier, at the age of 21, Mehmed had done what 1,000 years of armies had failed to do. He had taken Constantinople. He had ended the Roman Empire. Europe called him the Conqueror, and it was not flattery, it was a warning. An ambush was arranged to bring Vlad in. He saw it coming and turned it inside out, capturing the Ottoman commander sent to collect him. What he did next was the point of no return. In the winter of 1461 and into 1462, Vlad crossed the frozen Danube and swept along the southern bank, burning fortresses, emptying river towns, wrecking the Ottoman defensive line for hundreds of miles. He was not raiding for plunder. He was making a settlement between the two states impossible. Then he wrote a letter. On the 11th of February, 1462, he sent a report of the campaign to Matthias Corvinus, the King of Hungary, his hoped-for ally, and in it he set out a tally of what the campaign had cost the other side. Just under 24,000. He counted it out by district, like a man doing his accounts, and then he told Corvinus what he expected in return. Send help. We have broken the peace with the Sultan, together. That letter still survives, and I have read a copy of it. It is the strangest thing. It isn't ranting. It's administrative, cold, tidy, itemized. Somehow that makes it worse. Mehmed's answer came in the spring, and it was enormous. Contemporary figures for that army are wildly unreliable. The Greek historian Laonikos Chalkokondyles claimed 150,000, and modern historians think that is far too high. But nobody argues about the shape of it. This was the second largest force Mehmed ever personally led, smaller only than the one he had brought to Constantinople. Against it, Vlad could put perhaps 20 to 30,000 into the field, and many of those were farmers. Do that arithmetic on a road near your own home. For every man Vlad had, 3 or 4 were walking toward him, professionals with siege cannon, a river fleet, and a sultan who had never yet turned back from anything. The crossing came at night, near the fortress of Turnu on the Danube, and Vlad tried to stop it at the water's edge. Janissaries came over in boats in the dark and were met by cannon fire from entrenched Wallachians on the far bank. Ottoman accounts describe the Sultan watching from the opposite shore, deeply shaken as the crossing faltered. He brought over roughly 120 guns and hammered the position until it broke. The Ottomans got across. Vlad withdrew inland, And that, in the ordinary course of things, is where this story should end. A vastly superior army is on your soil. You have lost the river. There is nothing left but the road to your capital. Except Vlad had no intention of giving Mehmed a battle. He was going to give him a country instead, and make it worthless. Everything ahead of the Ottoman advance was emptied. Villages cleared, granaries stripped, herds driven off into the hills, crops burned in the fields, wells fouled so the water could not be drunk. The population was pulled back into the forests and the mountains. It was merciless, and it fell hardest on his own people, which is a thing worth sitting with for a moment. He was destroying the country he was defending. Ottoman sources are our best witnesses here, and they are grim reading. The chronicler Tursun Beg described the march in that Wallachian summer. No water for the front ranks, carts and animals halting, and heat so ferocious he joked you could cook meat on the mail shirts of the soldiers. The Greek writer Doukas recorded that after crossing the Danube and marching for 7 days, Mehmed found no people, no livestock, and nothing at all to eat or drink. Understand what that does to an army. 60, 80, 100,000 men need water every single day, and a war horse needs several times what its rider does. An Ottoman army on campaign normally lived by buying and taking what it needed as it walked. That was the whole system, and Vlad had reached in and removed it. They were burning through supplies with nothing to replace them, in punishing heat, with illness moving quietly through the tent lines, the way it always did. And the countryside they were crossing was not empty at all. Fast Wallachian horsemen hit the flanks, the stragglers, the foraging parties, and vanished back into the trees. No line to break, no fortress to storm, nothing to conquer. Mehmed had spent his career solving military problems. This one had no solution in it because it wasn't really a military problem. It was aimed at the mind. The 16th of June, 1462, near Targoviste. The Ottoman camp has settled for the night, tens of thousands of men in lines of tents, watchfires burning low. Riders are coming in through the dark, and the sentries let them through because they are dressed as Ottoman soldiers, and the man leading them answers in perfect Turkish. The education Edirne gave a resentful boy is walking straight back into the middle of Mehmed's army. The night attack begins somewhere after midnight, and it is chaos almost immediately. Vlad's horsemen tear through the tent lines with torches, and the camp cannot tell friend from enemy in the dark. He is not raiding for supplies. He is hunting one man. If he reaches the Sultan's tent, the largest empire in the world loses its head in a single night, and the whole invasion collapses on the spot. He gets it wrong. In the confusion, he strikes the wrong tents, by most accounts those of Mehmed's senior officials, and by the time the mistake is clear, the army has woken up. The Ottomans regroup, push the raiders out, and the sun comes up on a camp that is battered, sleepless, and badly frightened. Vlad has failed. He has also just proven that this Sultan cannot sleep safely in the middle of his own army. I find that detail almost unbearably good, by the way. He rode into the enemy camp wearing their uniform, speaking their language, using the training they had personally given him to try to reach the man at the top. If you can name me a better example of something coming back around on the people who created it, I would genuinely like to read it below, because I've been turning that one over for years and I have not found its equal. Mehmed pressed on to Targoviste. What he found there was a capital with its gates standing open, evacuated, quiet, a handful of guns left behind and hardly anyone to work them. No defenders, no surrender, no prince. Outside the city, on the approach road, Vlad had left him something else. The sources describe a display arranged with terrible patience across the ground in front of the walls, stretching into the distance, and made up of the men who had not come home from earlier fighting. Chalker condyles put the number at around 20,000, and he was not there to count. What the number is doesn't much matter. What matters is what it did. The most powerful ruler in the world looked at that road and turned his army around. Sit with that for a second, because it is the whole story. Mehmed the Conqueror had taken the city that everyone said could not be taken. He had ended an empire that had lasted for over 1,000 years, and on a hot afternoon in Wallachia, having lost no major battle, having beaten every force sent against him, he decided that this particular country was not worth what it would cost, and he went home. He struck at the port of Bryla on his way out and returned to his capital with captives and cattle, and he never personally invaded Wallachia again. But calling that a victory takes some nerve, and here is where the story turns cold. Mehmed had brought a second weapon into Wallachia, and it was quieter than any cannon. He had brought Radu, Vlad's younger brother, raised in the same court, backed now with Ottoman money and Ottoman troops, and offering the exhausted Wallachian nobility a very simple deal. Pay the tribute, keep your lands, stop this. They took it. One family after another slipped away to Radu, and within months, Vlad had a throne with nobody standing under it. He fled north to Hungary, to the ally he had written that careful letter to, and Matthias Corvinus arrested him. There was nothing personal in it. Corvinus had collected substantial funds from the Pope to lead a crusade against the Ottomans, and he had rather less appetite for actually leading one. A war-hungry Wallachian on his southern border was now an inconvenience. To justify locking up a man Europe had been calling a Christian hero, the Hungarian court produced letters supposedly proving Vlad had been plotting with the Sultan all along. Historians today consider them forgeries. That is politics for you. 6 centuries, and it hasn't learned a single new move. Vlad spent years in Hungarian custody, was slowly rehabilitated, married into Corvinus's own family, and in 1476 finally rode south to take Wallachia back. He held it for about 2 months. That December, in fighting somewhere north of present-day Bucharest, he fell. The circumstances are disputed even now, and his resting place has never been confirmed. Proof that he was gone was carried to the Sultan's capital, and that is the last certain thing we know about him. His story should have ended right there, as a footnote in Balkan history. Instead, something happened that nobody could have planned. A piece of technology arrived at exactly the wrong moment for his reputation. The printing press. 12 years after he fell, in October of 1488, a printer in Nuremberg produced a short illustrated pamphlet about the deeds of Dracula the voivode. It was lurid, it was cheap, and it was a runaway hit. Around 14 different editions came off presses in Nuremberg, Augsburg, Strasbourg, and Leipzig over the following decades, complete with woodcut portraits, making him one of the earliest best-selling personalities of the printed age. Where did those stories come from? Largely from the German-speaking Saxon merchant towns of Transylvania, whose trading privileges Vlad had stripped away, and from the Hungarian court that needed him to look like a monster. In other words, the man's global reputation was written, printed, and mass-distributed by the two groups with the strongest possible motive to ruin him. He was, arguably, the target of the first viral smear campaign in European history, and it worked so well, it is still working today. Not everyone bought it. A Russian account written in the same era tells many of the same episodes, but frames him as a stern, incorruptible ruler obsessed with honesty and order. Same man, same deeds, completely different verdict. Which version you inherited depended entirely on which printing press was nearest. 4 centuries later, on the 8th of August, 1890, an Irish theatre manager walked into a subscription library in the seaside town of Whitby on the Yorkshire coast. He was on holiday, and he was working on a novel about a vampire he had provisionally named Count Wampir. A name I think we can all agree the world is better off without. He asked for a rare volume, a British consul's account of Wallachia and Moldavia, published in 1820. It was restricted stock, the kind of book you read at a desk while a librarian keeps half an eye on you, and he did not read all of it. He turned to one section, made notes, and handed it back. In it, he found a Wallachian prince called Dracula, and a footnote claiming the word meant devil in the local tongue. Bram Stoker wrote the name down. 7 years later, he published it, and a 15th century Wallachian voivode was quietly conscripted into a horror story he had nothing whatever to do with. Stoker never went to Romania. Not once. He built his Transylvania out of library books in England, which makes the modern tourist industry rather wonderful, because the fortress marketed the world over as Dracula's castle is Bran, a place with no documented connection to Vlad at all, and it is doing extremely well out of him. His actual mountain stronghold is Poenari, further south, and if you want to reach the ruins, you climb well over 1,000 steps up through forest where the local authorities post genuine warnings about bears. One castle got the legend, the other got the stairs. And in Romania, he was never the villain. He is a national defender there, the prince who refused the tribute, who would not go quietly, who stood in front of the conqueror and did not move. Both of those men are the same man. That is the uncomfortable thing history keeps handing us, and we keep refusing to take. What he understood in that scorched summer is something armies have relearned in every century since. You do not always have to beat an enemy. Sometimes you only have to make the price of winning look higher than the prize, and let him do the arithmetic himself. Mehmed II was not defeated in Wallachia. He was persuaded. If this one pulled you all the way to the end, come with me for the next one. Subscribe here to Mystique History and tell me down in the comments whether you think the man who turned that army around was a defender or something darker, because I have never once been able to settle it in my own head. Your arguments genuinely do steer where I go. He lost his throne, lost his brother, lost his grave, and lost his name to a novel. And still, 600 years on, the Sultan turned back, and the world never turned away. Don't forget to check out the video recommended by YouTube on the left side of the screen.